Hey, so I shared a post the other day which was demonstrating the deadlift, and I asked which one is the most optimal deadlift setup, and there were some answers that were interesting. I asked each person to give me their reasons as to why they thought, but I wanted to go over and clarify a few aspects about the deadlift that it's easy to overlook. Now, the reason that I put this up, it wasn't the play gotcha or to make fun of anybody or to be like I'm right, you're wrong. I really appreciate everybody contributing to it and chipping in with their thoughts on it because it's an exercise we train. It's a fundamental human exercise, a fundamental human movement pattern that we train very regularly. So it's important that I think to at least think about it, to understand why we set up how we do and why we do the things that we do whenever we're lifting it. Whenever it comes to the deadlift, it's the lift where you lift the heaviest weight. You can lift heavier weight on it compared to your squat or your bench press or your overhead press, your clean, your snatch, or any other barbell exercise. It's the one movement where you can hit the biggest amount of weight. So heavier weight demands more efficiency, okay? And you can get away with more inefficiency whenever weight is lighter on the bar. But whenever it comes to heavy deadlifts, it is really important to set up efficiently and to pull the weight from the floor efficiently. Otherwise, heavy weight will not go. As the weight goes up, the efficiency demands go up. That's pretty much what it boils down to. But yeah, I really appreciate everybody chipping in, because if I put up a post like that and nobody contributes, then it doesn't really give me an awful lot to go on. I really appreciate everybody chipping in with their thoughts and taking the time to actually leave their comments. We're going to go through some of the comments, and I'm going to tell you some of the things that I like about some of the comments and some of the things that maybe are a little bit off, or a little bit of thought needs to go into them. But let's start off with the most common answer, which was this one. I asked which one was the most, which was the best setup, and almost everybody, I think it was over 80% of people, picked this one. And which is really interesting, because if you go and look online, if you go and Google deadlift setup, years ago, this would be the setup. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad position. It's not terrible. You can lift weight from the floor, even like this, like number 3. Thankfully, nobody picked this one as the most efficient or the most optimal way of setting up a deadlift. But now, that's not to say that this is dangerous or detrimental. Some people are like, yeah, that's inherently wrong. I used to think that, but it's all a matter of optimal setup. We're asking about optimal. We're not asking about dangerous or safe. We're asking about optimal. You can pick up lots of objects from the floor with a rounded spine like this and be absolutely fine. However, is it optimal? No. Could you pull significantly more weight with a better position? Absolutely. So to say that it's dangerous or detrimental inherently, it's not true. If you brace in that position, you'll probably be just fine. Now, if you're trying to lift the weight you normally lift with a straight spine like this, you will get in trouble and you probably will hurt something. Law of averages. Now, I don't like telling people that you're going to get hurt doing like that, but that is one scenario where it could happen. If you are used to deadlifting 100 kilos in this setup, or in this setup, or in this setup, and then you suddenly try to do it like this, don't be surprised if things go haywire. Don't be surprised if you can't actually lift it off the floor, because it's not a strong position. That's what it boils down to. It's not a good position. You're not as strong in this position as you are in some of the other ones. But it's very interesting that this was the one that most people picked up as the most optimal. And I understand why. Manual handling has a lot to answer for. Manual handling courses tell you to lift with your legs, not with your back, right? Lift with your knees, not with your back. So it involves you bending your knees, getting lots of angle on the knees. That's almost like a right angle, wouldn't you say, there at the knee joint? Interestingly, there was someone commented and they said that there's lots of hamstring and posterior chain activation. Whenever I was in this position setting this up, this is me by the way, but whenever I was setting this up, I felt very little hamstring or posterior chain activation. What I felt was quads. I felt the top half of my leg here, the front part of my leg. That's where I felt it the most. But the biggest discrepancy or the biggest issue I have with this setup is, watch this shin angle. Okay. This is the kind of the part that I have an issue with. The shins, you see the knees are protruding out past the arms here, and the shins are very far forward. So much so that the shins have actually pushed the bar away from the center of my foot. Unfortunately, the view doesn't show you. That's the other thing. Thank you for contributing to this, even though you can't see everything. You can't see where the bar is exactly. You can kind of see where I'm grabbing the bar here, but you can't see over the top of the plate, which makes it a little bit more tricky. But it's still obvious that the shins are forward, right? They're leaning forward, knees are forward. Shoulders are pretty much directly over the top of the bar. And that in itself is another problem. But the problem with the shins coming forward, first of all, is that it pushes the bar away from the center of your foot. If the bar is away from the center of your foot, it means that you're off balance instantly. So whenever I try to lift this off the floor, I'm going to take a wee swing out away, and then it's going to come back in and straight up. You can't do that with heavy weight. You can't afford to do that with a heavy set of 5 or a heavy set of 3. So that's a problem. The other problem is this pulling angle, shoulders over the top. That is not an efficient and balanced pulling angle. It's not mechanically sound. If I drop a weight from shoulder height to the floor, it goes directly down and hits the floor, right? It doesn't take a detour. It doesn't take a big, rounded detour before it hits the ground. It goes straight down. And that is because it's the most efficient path to earth, right? Straight. And the same thing when you're lifting a heavy weight off the floor. If it's heavy enough, you have to pull it straight or else it won't go at all. If you can pull it inefficiently, you're probably not lifting heavy enough. But aside from that, in this position, I'm not switching on my glutes and hamstrings as much as I should and could be, which are bigger and more powerful and stronger muscles than my quads. Not just me, generally speaking, in humans. And there's just something wrong. So it's not the worst position in the world, but it's not the best position. It's not the most efficient position. It's not the most balanced position. There is more quad activation here than hamstring activation. The bar is forward of the middle of the foot, and the shoulders are too far forward. They're over the middle of the shoulders over the top of the bar, which is a problem. We've dealt with number 3. Number 2, there's a few people picked up on this one as the best position, and I would tend to agree. There's some things I like about this one. There's some things I like about number 4 as well. This one is probably the best one because if you think of the angle of the back, a lot of people think that is too horizontal. That is actually the most efficient position for me. And if you're deadlifting, you want to find the most efficient back angle for you. Things like arm length, femur length, spine length, all of those things will play a part in what your back angle looks like when it comes to a deadlift. This is a really good setup for me here. You can see a little bit of a curve in my lower back and my lumbar spine, and it's pretty good. That's kind of what you want. You want a little bit of extension, fairly neutral, a little bit of extension, not hyperextended, but just a little bit of extension. And I do remember feeling my lower back, my erector spinae muscles switching on for this one. And then a brace, and I lift it off the floor. If you look at my neck, eyes are pretty much looking at the floor. I think it's in that little patch there. That's either a sweat patch or it's maybe some dog drool. I can't be sure, but that is where I'm looking. Shoulders just forward of the bar, kind of bottom of the shoulder blades on top of the bar, which is a good position. Hamstrings lit up, glutes switched on, and the shins are a lot more vertical, aren't they? They're a lot straighter. So that means that the bar is staying over the middle of my foot, over the arch of my foot. Much like that one, number 4 isn't too dissimilar. There's maybe a little bit more flexion in the spine. I would say it's neutral still. It's absolutely fine. It's not a bad position. It's not an unsafe position. It's not an inefficient position. It's just not as optimal, I would say, as number 2. Again, shoulders maybe a little bit too far forward. So not as efficient as number 3. That pulling angle is not going to be as balanced. Bar is nice and tight to the shins. Shins are nice and vertical, which is a good sign. So it's going to stay over my midfoot. But hopefully that sheds some light on the different aspects of the deadlift. There's a great book. I'm going to show it here in a wee second. Starting Strength, Basic Barbell Training, 3rd edition by Mark Ripito. I cannot recommend this book enough if you want to actually get into the nitty gritty as to why this is a good deadlift setup and why this is not. It gives you all the information you need to know and much, much more that you don't need to know. But it all boils down to efficiency and biomechanics. And I really highly recommend it. I want to share this little page here. So this is on the Facebook page, and some people chipped in with their answers, which is really cool. I really appreciate it. So Melanie here says, Melanie was in this morning and we went through, she was asking that she get it right. I was explaining, she got the number wrong. We're not saying number 1, we're saying number either 2 or 4. So she says, shins near the bar, correct. Straight arms, correct. Back straight with bum slightly out, correct. Head and eyes forward, yep. Number 5, tummy squeezed in. This is the one, I actually said it this morning, this is the one that people get confused a lot. If you have done yoga or Pilates or maybe even PE, you'll maybe been told to pull your tummy in, and that becomes a problem. The reason is a problem is because you want to push out. You want to do the exact opposite. You want to make your tummy as big as possible. You want to expand 360. You want to pull your pelvic floor muscles up, let your diaphragm down as you take the big breath, and push your tummy out as far as you can, 360 degrees round, front, sides, and back. So that's the exact opposite. Don't pull your tummy in. Number 6, full lungs and pull through your legs. Yeah, full lungs. You want it, maybe not even full, maybe even 50%, 60% of lung capacity. You don't have to fill them all the way up. Problem with taking a huge breath is that you will take so long taking it, you actually be gassed and lightheaded potentially before you even start to lift it. You don't need that much air to get a rep done, and you're going to breathe in between every rep. Then it says pull through your legs. That isn't pull through your legs. That isn't how I would describe it. Say push through your feet, so you're pushing the ground away from you. It is more of a pushing exercise for your lower body. You've pulled tight with your upper body and your core. And number 7, good humor, good lift equals calluses. I believe a wise man once said that. Then for Graham, my pal is slagging me off saying I see you a lot of number 3. And then Rory said number 1, and then he changed his mind. He says, I'm going to change number 2, bum out and hips up. I think he's been influenced by Shane down here, who said, since you're always telling me to raise my hips, I'm going to go for number 2. Yeah, you're correct, Shane. That was good. And Emma got number 2 as well. She didn't explain why, but yeah, she sees that number 2 is the correct one. Kate said number 1. And then I asked why. I said, that's because everybody else said I'm a sheep. She's definitely not. And then Marcel said, in this way, I can distribute better on the weight and lift without losing balance or hurt my back. I hold my core, push my feet, I squeeze my glutes, and I control my back. I'm sorry for not being able to explain it better. That's a good explanation. That's pretty good. I disagree maybe with the number that you picked the setup, but the description is pretty much spot on. Your glutes are going to be nice and tight. You're going to have to control your back. You're going to push for your feet, absolutely. Hold your core, and yeah, keep it balanced. And then Dara says number 1. And then Dara's given a lot of detail here. He's explained why, which is really cool. I really appreciate him chipping in. Chest up, lats engaged, not collapsing down, so he's heading the right direction. Up, hip height optimal, hamstrings, posterior chain will be fine in order to stand up out of it. If hips are lower, it would be a squat using quads to initiate the movement, and that's unnecessary. Nice flat back, lats engaged, good, posterior chain engaged. Yeah, all good points. My question is, what if hips are lower, it would be a squat? What if the hips are higher? I would say if hips are higher, it's a deadlift. That's how I would describe it. Now, there's different setups for different types of lifts. If you go back to this is probably not a bad setup for the clean, because the clean's lighter weight than a deadlift. Even a snatch is lighter weight. You might even get down lower for a snatch, but that efficiency goes down. The demands for efficiency goes down the lighter the weight is. The demands for efficiency go up the heavier the weight is. It has to go straight up if it's heavy weight. So yeah, I think that's all of the comments. Again, really appreciate everybody chipping in with their ideas and their thoughts on it. And it's been a really good discussion point. Hopefully this is helpful as a education piece, and just to get you thinking a little bit more about how you set up for deadlift and what you're actually trying to achieve, what position you're trying to get into. And our job is to try and help you to get into that position as effectively as possible with as little confusion as possible. The 5-step deadlift setup, I can't emphasize enough how useful that is as a tool to try and make your deadlift better. It works for beginners, intermediates, and advanced lifters. It really does. It's improved everyone across the board. If you can get your 5-step setup, so first step is bring your shins in so that they are 1 inch from the bar when you're standing up. You're going to have your feet about hip width, shoulder width stance apart, toes turned ever so slightly out. And you're going to then, number 2, reach down and grab the bar tightly with your hands without bending your knees, or as little bend your knees as possible. Then you're going to, that's number 2. Number 3 is you're going to bring your shins forward so that they touch the bar, but don't move the bar forward. The bar stays still. And your knees are going to be pretty much in the middle of your arms at this stage. Then you're going to pull tight on the bar with your arms, keeping your arms straight. So make sure your arms are straight. Pull your back into shape, into a little bit of extension, but mostly neutral. As neutral as you can. Again, neutral is a range. It's not one particular shape. And then you're going to take a big breath, as Melanie said, and a few other ones said, take a big breath in, fill that tummy, make it as big as possible, 360 degrees, and pull your pelvic floor up, and then push the ground away with your feet. Okay, so that last step is taking a big breath in, as far as I'm concerned. Some people might have a different opinion, but that's how I would say that is the last step. But yeah, that's about it. Hopefully you can understand the nuances with the deadlift and why it's important to lift it efficiently. It's not a matter of safe or unsafe. If you brace correctly, it's surprising what you can get away with. Even this. If you're lifting like a heavy stone or sandbag or awkward object, you will be just fine if you've trained yourself. It is important to build resilience in the spine in less than optimal shapes. This is not optimal. This is optimal. Even this is too bad. But it is a range, and there's the deadlift. While it is such a simple lift, is literally picking something up off the floor, it gets more tricky and more complicated, and more detailed the heavier the weight becomes. And dialing in those little technical points will help your deadlift get a lot stronger and make sure you're lifting as much weight as you possibly can to develop all of these muscles. So everything from here all the way down is getting worked. Right the way down. Forearms, arms, shoulders, lats. There's not many muscles that this exercise leaves out. So whenever you do it correctly, everything's working. Pretty much everything's working here. So hopefully that has clarified it. And yeah, if you have any questions or you want any more clarity, I would love to chat to you and love to help you with it. But yeah, until next time, don't forget to train today so you can be stronger tomorrow.